Thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Of course, on the Monday after the launch of the NPP Manifesto, there is only one thing on the agenda. And tonight, we're going to do a few things for you. We are digesting the manifesto. There is so much you've heard, and there is so much you've been doing since Saturday to try and break this down for you in a way that you can appreciate and understand. And so we're going to start with that. And of course, I'm going to be joined by the Information Minister. Of course, he's the man who speaks for the government, is the prime spokesperson for the government, and will give us some further clarity when we sit down for the conversation. And the last part of this, we would bring you that conversation about the Ijapa Royalties saga. And so today we're going all the way to 10:30. There's a lot to get through for you. Let's start. Let's start with the NPP Manifesto and work we've been doing in trying to break this down for you here on PM Express. And one of the things we've been doing is to dig into the manifesto in a way that is easy to digest. And let's start with, we've broken the manifesto down into various sectors and counted the individual number of promises made there, because that gives you a sense of where the party is placing a bit more emphasis. And as you can see, this is the manifesto. Sector, housing, we counted, this is by our own count, 10 promises in all made in housing, right? If you look at health, there is 22 promises that we counted that made in the area of health in the 2020 manifesto that was launched on Saturday. If you look at agriculture, there is 16, economy, industry, and trade combined had 14 promises in all, which in itself is interesting. I'll tell you why these numbers are important. It gives you a sense of where the party, I guess, is focusing more. In education, we counted 20, and this is tied with transport also. Transport also had 20 promises that we counted. Infrastructure has 7, and of course, in a week where a lot of focus has been on infrastructure, I mean, this is an important number to look at in terms of the sheer number of promises that the NPP packed into the infrastructure sector. Foreign affairs is the lowest, is 2. You see tourism, creative arts has 5 promises made. Chieftaincy has 5 also. Social protection has 3 in the manifesto as we counted. Now we have energy, which has 6, and then governance, another key area that a lot of civil society guys watch, has 8. Youth and sports has 5. A total number of promises that we counted in the 2020 manifesto narrows down to 143 promises. Why are these important? You see that the sector with the most promises is health, which has 22 promises that we counted. Does that indicate that of course, according to the government and the government's own view, health is such an important matter? Doesn't it make sense, I think, in the midst of COVID-19, a lot that has influenced the crafting of the manifesto? Is that possibly why we are seeing 22 promises in health? And if you look at the various sectors and the numbers, health has a greater proportion of promises made in 22. Maybe COVID-19 is a reason why there is so many promises, followed by education and transport, both tied at 20 promises each. Now, education is important. Remember, in 2016, the NPP ran a campaign primarily on education. It was a flagship thing for them with the free SHS. In 2020, it's in second place to health. Of course, in 2016, we didn't have COVID-19. In 2020, we have COVID-19. Education is important, but it's in second place. Transport is in third as well. I mean, joint second is both education and transport. These are very interesting, I guess, issues to look at. But look at foreign affairs. Foreign affairs has only 2. I guess it tells a story. This is a country that is not big on foreign affairs. So the least number of promises we see in foreign affairs. But agriculture has 16, which is after health and also transport. It comes in third place. And of course, agriculture is a big deal for the government also. Remember in 2016, planting for food and jobs, that is key. But let's do something else with the numbers that we see. We are looking at the 2016 numbers. Imani counted 510 promises in 2016. So quickly, you begin to see what is happening. 2016, 510 promises. 2020, we are at 143, a drastic reduction in the numbers of promises made from one election year to the next. What is happening? We'll tell you what we think is happening and explain why we think the numbers of promises had fallen. But let's look at the comparison. Comparison is important in trying to compare. This is a party in power, by the way. They came into power in the back of 2016. They are bringing us a 2020 manifesto. You must do the comparison, which is what we're doing for you tonight. As I said, if you look at the shared numbers, 2016, 510. 2020, 143 promises. Drastic reduction. Is reality check setting in? I mean, when you are in government, you cannot be as bombastic as you are in opposition, coming into wanting to regain power. And so you promise a lot. And then when you get into government, some say reality check sets in, you begin to become a bit more moderate in what you promise people, because you've seen how difficult it is possibly to implement some of the things you promised in 2016. Is that why we're seeing the reduction in numbers? We don't know. We'll try and find out. Again, 2016, the NPP had a standout flagship promise, which is free SHS. In 2020, it's difficult to find what the obvious standout flagship promise is. I mean, the information minister possibly could help us understand whether there's a flagship promise. Nobody can argue that in 2016, free SHS wasn't the flagship promise that was made. What is it for 2020? We couldn't find one outstanding one that stood out of the lot, but there's a lot of them. Now, let's look at again, one of the key differences in 2016-2020 manifestos. Promises were simplified into number-based slogans. You remember 1D, 1F, one district, one factory, one village, one dam, one constituency, $1 million. 2020, that has given way. It's gone. No more fantastic numbers and slogans. A departure from number-based promise to a more general framing of the promises. Here, it was very easy for journalists like us, civil society, to track. One district, one factory means every district will have it. So it's easy to go there and look. I am going to count. I have a finite number of districts. Do I have a factory in all of them? Very easy to track. Government is moving away from that after 4 years in power. Again, so why do we have the difference? We think what is happening is what we call the incumbency reality check. That's what we think is happening here. When you are in government, you get to implement the policies. You know how difficult it is. When you're introducing a manifesto, you will necessarily be checked by the reality that you've seen in 4 years. Possibly that is what is accounting for the drop in promises from 510 to 143. Now, something else that we've been looking into in the 2020 manifesto is what we found, that at least 13 promises have been repeated or are similar. 2016 manifesto to 2020 manifesto, 13 at least we counted that are repeated or similar. What are these? Very interesting. Some of them word for word lifted and reintroduced in 2020. This one fascinates me. Collaboration with the private sector, provide free Wi-Fi coverage for senior secondary and tertiary institutions nationwide dedicated to learning. 2016 manifesto. The wording almost the same in 2020. Complete the provision of free Wi-Fi at all senior secondary schools and public tertiary institutions and training colleges. That's it, right there. There's more in the manifesto. NPP will enact Consolidated Minerals Revenue Management Law. It's back in 2020, passed into law, Mineral Revenue Management Bill. Does that mean that at least these students have pointed out that this is an admission that yes, we promised in 2016 we couldn't deliver, so we're bringing it back? I mean, we're going to interrogate that. Why? Was that the case? Why couldn't they? Why did the government fail to do it in 2016, 2017 to 2020, and they're bringing it back? The key question you ask is, if we couldn't do it then, what's the guarantee that you could do it now? We'll get information minister to answer that question. We have formalizing the economy through the stabilization of national database. You see it there, linking national identification card with Ghanaian Revenue Authority, convert all NHIA card numbers into 10, similar promise. And it runs through the 13 that I've talked about. This is another one. Create an information portal, set up a task force to assist youth in artisans to make their products and services on a global, local, national, and global scale. Look at the wording in 2020. Build a digital platform for artists to make their products available to global market. Again, very similar promise there. And this really runs through some of the key areas. This is infrastructure, by the way. 2016, leverage oil revenue to complete Accra, Kumasi, Paga rail line connections and the rehabilitation of the Western and Eastern rail lines. Eastern Rail Line is here again. And then you see also the mention of the Western Rail Line, again, a key thing that has been repeated here. Again, fishing landing sites, again, is there in 2016. The landing sites were again mentioned, pretty similar to what we saw. I want to quickly go to the end of this, and because it's just, as I said, repetition is similar. Promises, building a Tema, a Kosomo Rail Line, the Volta Lake Transport Improvement, which is pretty similar to what we saw in 2016. Invest in the expansion and equipping of medical schools is brought back, expanding access to medical schools in Ghana. 2020, upgrade all existing district hospitals. It's come back, but with some greater detail in 2020. Obviously, I guess COVID-19 dictates a bit of the issues when it comes to health also. Similar with this. And create land banks. Again, is that in 2016, pretty similar wording. Facilitated development of an active mortgage market. Again, back, greater detail in 2020. I want to quickly end with this controversial one that we found in the 2020 manifesto. And we call it, what has the NDC got to do with this? There's a promise in the 2020 manifesto that says the NPP will launch in 2020 going forward, 2021 going forward, a road maintenance infrastructure program to employ the youth. This is on page 159. It sounded very, very familiar. I thought I'd heard it before, so I went to check. And I found that in 2011, the NDC rolled out something pretty similar called the Youth in Road Maintenance Policy, executed under the Youth Employment Program. That sounds pretty familiar to me. What is the difference in this? Is this an NDC policy already executed that somehow has found its way back? We'll get some clarity on this, the two. Now, I'm going to be joined by someone you know, he's Information Minister, who, of course, is my guest tonight. And he's joining me in the studio right now. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah is the Information Minister and is, as you can see, walking on the set right now with his book already prepared. Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, I'm grateful that you could join us here on PM Express.
Thanks for having me, Evans.
Great. And now, Mr. Oppong Nkrumah has been gracious enough to also walk us through a bit of the things that he himself has highlighted. And as you can see, he's going to talk us through NPP 2020 Manifesto. This, you've heard ours. This is our version. Our breakdown, what is the government's? Does he agree with ours? Let's see what he says.
Well, Evans, let me start by congratulating you and your team for the good background work you have done. Our count of the 2016 manifesto and the promises therein, which we account for, comes up to 289.
In 2020?
In 2016.
2016.
You will find that groups like Imani, and I think even what the NDC has done, breaks down sometimes one single promise into a number of promises and list them as though they were different promises. And you would therefore find that in our count, when you put the whole thing together, for example, when we say in 2016 that we will modernize agriculture by doing the following, what we are doing is counting, for example, the 1, 2, 3, 4 items we've spoken about, but not necessarily modernizing agriculture as one item, and then in addition to 1, 2, 3, 4. So you will find little differences in some of the numbers. But be that as it may, in our count so far, about 80% of the 2016 promises we have either delivered or we're in the process of delivering. Now, if I just may quickly do an outline of, you know, what we have looked at in preparing this manifesto, you'll notice that this manifesto is 192 pages. We've spent 151 of those pages accounting for our stewardship. It's the last 41 pages that speak to new promises, some of which you have highlighted in your presentation. We've also spent some time outlining the gains we have made over the last 3.5 years. And then I'll probably just take you through an outline of some of the key promises that we are putting out there for what we like to call round 2, as you see put out on many of our T-shirts and our communication materials that are out there. Now, in 2016, by this time, you recall that some of the things that Ghanaians were grappling with, because it's always important to get the background, was a fast declining economy in terms of growth. Remember 2011, when we hit the highest point, about 14% GDP, mostly driven by the oil of 2008 from the Kufuor era. So by 2016, growth is coming down to about 3.4%. You are having high inflation of about 15%, interest rates of about 25%. The currency is tumbling, depreciating at a very fast rate. you are having all of these cohorts of young unemployed people forming graduate unemployment groups, etc. And then also in particular, poorly regulated, poorly managed financial services sector. I'm sure we'll have some time to speak about it later this evening because of some of the resolution mechanisms that we have put in place. You also have a collapsing national health insurance scheme and the re-emergence of cash and carry. Remember, around that time, you have even the Christian health providers coming together and saying that we're going to move on to cash and carry because health insurance is no longer working.
To be fair, that problem hasn't been solved completely under your government.
No, payment is not down to zero, but the dire nature of it, which actually put Christian and religious-based health organizations at a point where they were threatening to pull off, has seen a quick move, a sharp move from where the needle was. About 5 years of disrupted electricity supply, what we used to call doomsor. And you recall around this time, the kind of demonstrations, etc., that were taking place. Public sector recruitment because of the IMF program had been suspended except for essential services. And then one of the things we like to talk about a lot, allowances for nurses and teachers suspended around
You still maintain you solved
this time. Well, today you would notice that doomsor is a thing of the past. The thing that
because
we
of
said,
Mahama.
Because of Mahama, who did what exactly?
Because of the investment that they put in, as in January 2017 when you came, there wasn't doomsor.
Well, we consistently made the point that the challenge was not technical. It wasn't a capacity of production. It was a challenge of being able to afford oil and gas for even the already existent plants. What Mr. Mahama did was added what we now realize is overcapacity, which we spoke of at the time. And the overcapacity has now even added a second tier problem, which now leads us to about $1 billion a year for take-or-pay contracts, another matter we are dealing with.
Did you meet doomsor in 2017?
We did, and we have cured it.
I mean, I lived in this country.
Yes.
In 2017, when you came into power, doomsor was fake.
We will vehemently disagree with you, because if you look at the antecedents of all the things that happened prior to January and even the first quarter of 2017, you will recall how businesses at the time were still complaining it was an issue. The government at the time, of course, the government at the time, well, in 2016, ending of 2016.
That's my point.
The government at the time would tell you that they were putting things in place to resolve it. But remember, we consistently argued that it was not a production capacity challenge, because we had enough installed capacity. The challenge was the inability to procure oil and gas to hold those plants even existent working. So if you added more plants that we didn't need at the time, you don't get to say in the end that that is what I saw.
What credit do you give John Mahama, though?
For doing what?
What credit do you give him?
For doing what exactly? For creating the problem?
No, for fixing the problem.
For adding power plants that were not necessarily
increasing
required.
our capacity.
And today we have excess capacity which we are paying for. Our argument has always been, and it remains, that the challenge we had with doomsor was a financial, not a technical challenge. It was about running the economy in such a way that you could find resources to fire up the plants. If you chose not to look at that problem and instead add on more power plants, I'm not sure we're going to have a conversation about giving you some credit for it. But fast forward, the numbers don't lie. One of the major things we measure to see whether a country is moving forward or not, macro growth numbers. So you would have, and these are numbers between Ghana, in fact, these are numbers from Ghana Statistical Service.
What should we focus?
Well, we'll focus on the top line numbers. So 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, we look at 2020 with COVID and without COVID. And then we'll look at recovery. So take agriculture. We inherited agriculture at 2.9. And we started introducing what I'll talk about sometime today, some of these programs like planting for food and jobs, planting for export and rural development, etc. You will notice agri productivity begin to pick up 6.1, 4.8 on top of the 6.1, 4.6 on top of the 4.8. This year, we were budgeted to do 5.1 until COVID hit. And even with COVID, as economies are contracting, we are still going to grow on top of the 5.1. We won't hit, on top of the 4.6, we won't hit our 5.1, but we're still going to hit about 3.7. And because of the strong foundation that has been laid, and now as we get out of COVID, we're going to quickly get back to 4.2, 4.6, 5.1, 5.3. How does it compare? These are projections, of course. How does it compare to 2.9? Projections are based on your pipelines. How does it compare to 2.9?
Well, we've made several projections before. So nobody knew COVID was going to hit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the foundation...
Just put it in context.
It's fine. The foundation you have laid, the kind of pipelines you have, give you reason and basis to make these projections. And these are not my projections. These are Ghana Statistical Service projections. Remember something like rice. If you look at the rice growth curve towards hitting self-sustainability in, I think, about 2021 or so, they are able to look at all of those pipelines and project the kind of productivity you're expecting. Take something like industry. It was sitting around 4.3 in 2016 with doomsday and everything associated with it. By 2017, you are hitting 15.7. By 2018, about 10.6 on top of the 15.7. By 2019, 6.4 on top of the 10.6. You were hoping to hit 8.6 this year with VW and Nissan and all of these plants coming in. 1D1F getting to full throttle. Because of COVID, you're going to have a challenge, but it will still grow at 0.8%. But look at the recovery path, 5.6, 6.9, 5.4, 5. I'll quickly move to services. This is how poor services was doing by 2016, 2.8.
But in 2018, you dropped even further below what they left you.
You did, which is on top of the 3.3. And then by 2019...
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you said this is how poor, but this is poorer.
No problem. And I'm saying that this 2.7 is on top of that 3.3. If you look at it in the nominal terms, you see the outturns that are coming. But look at 2019. Now look at where we were stabilizing to. COVID now takes us back in terms of services, the lockdowns, people staying home, people not having opportunity to perform. All of these services are listed here. But we're expecting recovery to pick up. So the big picture you find from growth is that our economy has come up strongly. COVID has given us some challenges, and that's why you find, I think, chapter 2 of our manifesto focus extensively on the challenges that COVID has delivered to us and how we hope to recover from it. Now, very quickly, let me deal with two things. The key gains of the last 3.5 years. One of the things that we've always been talking about is macro stability. Without it, you can't do much. Because without it, you can't sustain any intervention that you introduce. You can't even have sustained growth on it. You would notice that the first part of our manifesto outlines what we've done to bring back macro stability. I'll just give you a few beyond the growth numbers. Look at inflation. About 7.9 end of 2019, 11.4 as of July 2020. The target is 8 plus or minus 2, and we're doing well to stay within that band. Take interest rate, 16% end of 2019, 14% as at March 2020. Growth and expansion comes with jobs, incomes, and improvement in quality of lives, as I've just been going through. We can all tell that story. Again, we've been proud to say that we've introduced several social programs that are enhancing access to education, health, and social protection. I don't need to belabor the argument about free SHS, and about getting more doctors and nurses out there, even in these COVID times.
I see you're repeating Bawumia 17,000 projects, 17,000 projects initiatives.
It's not Bawumia 17,000. Those are the numbers of the government of Ghana.
But you've had the NDC today. They factor some of the claims. Particular one, AstroTurf, put in there as done. We sent our reporter there tonight, wasn't done. Yeah,
I've heard Abuabia Samoa, the member of parliament from the area, make the point that, yes, that was an error that shouldn't have been included.
So you admit that?
But check this.
The NDC was right. On ghost project.
No, not on ghost project. Check the
but 17. That was a ghost project.
Yeah, but one ghost project one project out of 17,334 does not make the entire presentation full of ghost project. But here's my point.
But you get the point.
Oh yes, I do.
You put in there. You admit that.
Well, I've repeated that 2-3 times. Yeah. I'm saying if it's 17,334 initiated projects, 8,746 of them completed, 8,558 ongoing, and we have reason to say, what is it, 36? Is it 40? Is it 300 that maybe are questionable? That still leaves a huge chunk, if you net it out, about 17,000 infrastructure projects across this country, even if you discount 334. I'm saying, and our argument is this, we have invested heavily in infrastructure, doing more with less resources. If we go to the argument of our infrastructure budget over the last 4 years,
I'm just curious, because you said, yes, you've said the Adenta one is 1. Yeah. But even if you discounted by what? You said 300.
Even if I took off the whole 334.
My question is, we like to be accurate.
Yes.
How did we miss it? How did the government miss that?
MMDCs forward the data sets in. It was forwarded in. It turns out that it was inaccurate. I'm saying that even if you went beyond that one, verifications were done.
And they still missed it.
I'm sure they missed it. Even if you took out that one, or give or take the 26 that our colleagues in the NDC say that they had a challenge with, some of which I've seen tonight, even online. People go back to those places and say that, but that can't be true. We see these projects and put some of the videos online. I'm saying even if you discount 334, that is 17,000 infrastructure projects still out there. The challenge has been to our colleagues on the other side to produce a database of how many projects they have done so that you can do the comparisons. But be that as it may, strengthening anti-corruption and governance institutions has taken place. We have also, especially in this COVID period, provided compassionate, competent, concerned leadership through all of the interventions that we've put out there. So if you look at the data of work that has been done in the last 3.5 years, you find that we've discharged ourselves pretty well. Now in 2020, let me just highlight a few things.
As in going forward now?
Going forward. In 2020 to the 2024 period, we talk about the fact that jobs remains key on the agenda. Our data as published in our manifesto accounts for about 2 million jobs. If we have some time, we'll go into it.
So you created 2 million jobs in 4 years?
Yes, in 3.5 years.
In 3.5 years?
Yeah, we'll have some time to go through the breakdown.
Jobs numbers are always difficult to verify because we don't have it in Ghana.
Well,
so I wonder where you got the 2 million from.
Well, some of them are public sector jobs, some of them are private sector jobs as per SNIT database. Some of them, as you know, for example, when it comes to agriculture, they explain the basis on which they arrive at that data.
That has always been challenged by the experts on the ground, including the farmers themselves.
Well, we'll have an opportunity, don't worry, we'll have an opportunity to go through that data set here. It's on page 9 of the manifesto. But our intention is to continue on that path. I mean, if you look at the number of nurses and teachers and persons we've recruited, whether in the National Identification Authority or even the formal government sector, those ones are not up to dispute. There are some that some may raise questions about, and we can resolve those issues. But our task is to continue with the job creation agenda to move beyond our 2 million and build some more. Stability, as we have spoken about, has been shaky because of COVID. We intend to bring it back and consolidate it. Agriculture is a major employer. We have a number of agri programs. We intend to step it up some more. Industrial growth, now that you see things like the automotive industry coming on board, the 1D1F moving from the 76 where we are towards the full completion of the 232, as has been outlined there.
This is something we need to address before we go on. 1D1F, as I said at the beginning, 2016, one of the key differences we saw, you were very number-based, slogans, very easy to verify. One district, one factory, easy. All districts must have factories by the time you finish your first term. This is not the case as of now.
It is. It remains the case, and that's one of the things
you
I
have
need to point out to you.
By January 7, 2021, you have one factory in every district?
Well, the current count is 232 at various stages. 76 of them are already functioning.
Yeah.
The remainder is what they intend to work on and give you a scorecard by the time the government comes down.
76 complete.
We are functioning. 76 are
so complete and functioning.
Complete and functioning.
Okay.
And then you have 232 that, in fact, the total basket is 232, out of which 76
But this is the big question there.
Yes.
It's taken you, this is 3.5 years, right? 3.5 years to complete 76 and functioning.
Yes.
You're telling me that you're going to use the next 5 months to complete?
I have not said that. I've said
that's my question, basically.
No, I've said that by the time the gavel comes down on the night of the 6th, you have a clear account of how much of this 232 you were able to complete.
Direct question. Will you have one district, one factory in every single district by that night?
My answer to you is that today, as I speak to you, we have 232 that we are working on, out of which 76 have been completed. The task to the ministry is to ramp up and do as much as they can before the gavel comes down on the night of the 6th. We'll be here.
My question is direct.
And my answer is direct as well.
You've done projections. You've done projections on the other sectors.
Yes.
You know where you are. You've 3.5 years completed and functioning 46.
Yes.
76. 76.
Yes.
I'm taking your word for 76. Night of January 6th. I'm asking a direct question. Will you come? Because that's the problem. The promise is very clear.
And I hear
no arguments about that.
I hear you.
Will we have one factory in every district?
I have.
You can't say.
No, I'm repeating my answer.
Yeah.
That currently, as I speak to you, we have 232 at various stages, out of which 76 have been completed and are functioning. There is a remainder that the minister responsible has been tasked with to function and to ensure that he brings to completion. By the night of the 6th, when the gavel comes down, we will see how much he has achieved. But here's the point. If we did not have a program like this, we will not be talking these numbers.
But that's not what you promised.
No, if I may.
I get the argument.
If I may. If we did not have a program like this, we will not have these numbers. If by the time we are done with it, we are able to showcase to the people of Ghana that this was our commitment, it wasn't a hoax, this is how much of it we've been able to deliver in this period. We are pretty confident that the Ghanaian people looking at
But that's not what you promised us.
I don't know how many times you want me to
No, but I'm just simple. You're saying that, I mean, if I get there...
I'm saying...
You're not making caveats.
I'm not making caveats. I'm saying that 232 out of 260...
I get it. You've repeated that.
Yeah. 232 out of 260. Any Ghanaian out there will know that this administration has kept faith with a promise. In the midst of all the constraints, this is how much they have finished, and they will make a judgment. We'll leave it them to make that judgment.
Yeah, but you just admit that's not what you promised them.
Well, we did. We promised one district, one factory.
Yeah, but you don't.
And
one district, one factory is one district, one factory.
Yes, and we have 232 out of 260.
Okay.
That leaves you. I mean, if you take 232 out of 260, that leaves you with a small number that has not been touched. By the 232, they will be able to tell us how much of that.
As we stand here tonight,
they'll be able to tell us how much of that they have done by the night of the 6th. And I'm saying to you that we have demonstrated that we've kept faith with the promise. It wasn't a hoax. It's not something we forgot about or threw away.
You've attempted to execute it.
We have done a good chunk of it. We haven't finished.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to showcase it to the people for them to make a decision.
Okay.
And we'll leave them to make that judgment.
Filing of physical infrastructure
There's
gap.
a huge fiscal infrastructure gap when it comes to roads and bridges across the country. We've done a bit of it this year. We have not completed. We are optimistic that across the country, looking at the numbers that we are doing, God willing, if we have a second term, we'll be able to do some more in that process. And then the final list of major things. We're talking about the regional hospitals. We're talking about the National Rental Assistance Scheme, which has been one of the topics that's been discussed.
A question when we sit down, I need to clarify on this. Very important for me when we sit down.
I'll be happy to answer that. We're talking about 16 model senior high schools in the Zongo communities across the 16 regions. We're talking about a harbour in Cape Coast, a new airport in Cape Coast.
Two things to clarify.
Yes, they've become very topical. Yeah. I think between yesterday and today. We're talking of a National Olympic Sports Stadium complex. Feasibility studies need to be completed on the rail link through Kasua to Accra, and then the Eastern Rail Line.
Which I said was a promise you made in 2016 that you didn't fulfill.
No, but the thing is, when you are in opposition, you cast a broad vision of what you seek to do. When you come to power,
you get reality check.
No, it's not a reality check.
That's what happened to you.
You do what you ought to do to keep faith with the people that these are my promises.
That is what we call reality check.
If at the end of your tenure, there are, 13 promises, as you mentioned, which are outstanding, there's nothing embarrassing about raising those promises into your second term. That in all honesty, I was able to complete these ones or come a very far distance in these ones. But for these 13, I need to move them into the second term to complete. I don't think there's anything
But this is the question that raises. If you fail, this is the question that raises.
If I just may land on that one. Also, you notice that for some of those 13 promises, we say we will continue, which means we have started with it in the first phase. We admit we haven't completed, but we will continue with it in the second phase.
This is the question it raises. If you had 4 years to implement the policy that you yourself introduced in 2016 and you failed to do it, why should we believe that you can do it in the next 4 years?
It is different from if this government came and abandoned all of its promises.
Some of them you didn't touch at all.
Well, you have listed about 13 of them. We have mentioned to you that about 80% of our promises, we have kept faith with them. About 20% of them, we have not been able to touch them in this first term. We have migrated these promises, or we have said that, listen, in all honesty, this is what we have done. This 20% of our promises, we have not been able to keep faith with it for various reasons. I don't want to go into resource and other challenges. Now, what we are saying is that these promises, we are moving them into our second term. God willing, we have a second term, we have a second opportunity. There are things that we will deliver in addition to the new priority areas that we are talking about in our second term.
So Ghanaians should trust
and I don't think there's anything...
On those 13 at least that you couldn't do, they should trust that somehow you can do in 4 years, in the next 4 years.
But if we have done 80% of 289 promises, if we've done 80% of it, I'm sure that the average Ghanaian watching us tonight can keep faith that this administration, even if they were not able to complete 20% of their promises, we can trust that if they migrate it into the second term, in addition to the few headline promises that they are making, they will be able to complete it.
Okay.
Now, if you look at some of the other things that we're talking about, digitization, it started. We haven't completed with the digitization agenda. We're optimistic that Ghanaians will have faith in us for what we have done so far to complete the digitization agenda or to take it a very far road in the next term. Also, again, using digitization as a tool to curb corruption by improving access to government services and therefore reducing human interaction. Stimulating entrepreneurship has been a big thing. About 19,000 different business units trained, support for about 10,000 of them or so. We believe we've come a long way, and with an opportunity for a second term, we can do a lot more in that space. So just as a headline, these are some of the key things that we've been talking about for round 2, and we are hopeful that when the people of Ghana give us an opportunity, we can do our best to implement them.
I want you to stay with me, because when we return from this break, we're going to take a seat, and then we're going to be scrutinizing a bit more. You've had a bit of the questioning already. But we're going to scrutinize a bit more some of the key areas, get some further clarity. The airport question is still a raging one. I want Kojo Oppong Nkrumah's clarification, a few things. And we'll talk about the rent issue as well. But then, of course, at 10, we'll start a conversation around the Japa royalties issue as well, which I know many of you are also very interested in. Stay with us. Right back to interrogate a few of these things that Mr. Oppong Nkrumah had put forward. You've heard ours also. We'll see how it emerges. Stay with us. My guest is still the Information Minister, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. We are now seated, and so let's get into some of the specifics from the manifesto launch over the weekend. I'm pretty sure that you followed it. You followed already the presentation. I hope it made a bit more sense to you. Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, let's start with the what has turned out to be, I guess, one of the most topical, most talked about promise. Yeah. The Cape Coast Airport. Yeah. The president on Friday was on the show on ATL FM. She was asked a question this morning. People feel strongly that looking at our potential in tourism, we need to put up an airport. The president reacts, quote, "This is a place which is 1.5 hours from the capital, which has a major international airport. There is an airport in Takoradi. The studies are ongoing." Then the next day, it's in the manifesto that you will build an airport for Cape Coast. Was this study done? The study the president talks about, was it done?
Yes, my understanding that is that it's a study that has been done. Let me give you a bit of a background. I mean, if my reading is correct, the conversation about an airport for Cape Coast started as far back as around 1997. And since then, there have been repeated calls and analysis about whether or not it is feasible to have an airport in the central region or close to the Cape Coast area. If I recall again, the Mills administration talked about a feasibility study to even determine whether or not that can be done. Now, if you again check from about 2017, 2018, Cecilia Abinadapa, then as aviation minister, talked about the feasibility work that was going on for Cape Coast as a potential place to have an airport. In that interview with the president, I've seen people suggest that the president said the need had not been justified. Today on Asempa FM, I asked for the full tape to be played back. The president never said that. Indeed, the president talked about the fact that the feasibility for an airport in Koforidua, which is also just about an hour from Accra and Accra's International Airport, and that of Cape Coast are ongoing by the Aviation Ministry. Some persons have asked, so why didn't he announce it there and then, and it is in our manifesto? The president has a right to answer questions as he sees fit. Indeed,
as of the time he was speaking, he didn't know it was complete.
He did. The president assigned the vice president to chair this effort. I have been in several meetings where the president and the vice president, in preparing us for this event, alluded to several things that we needed to tidy up, put up a committee, reviewed all that was in here. But the president was not obliged at that interview to necessarily give a hint of what was in this manifesto.
No.
Indeed, if you recall.
No, I mean, you could have simply said the feasibility study is complete and we are waiting to see what the outcome is.
He chooses to answer his questions as he sees fit. Let me give another example. He was asked about what will you do about tertiary education, about 2 weeks to this. And he said, we are considering what to do about it. Our manifesto was not out. He was not obliged to tell anybody what was in the manifesto until the event day. On the event day,
he wasn't required to tell us. Yes. The question was simple. He chose to go to the route of studies ongoing.
Yes.
But you said after that time he knew it was finished.
He knew that it was clear in this manifesto that
we just completed the studies. Yes. He could have just simply said that without telling us what is going to be the manifesto.
That way, and I don't think that we're going to mark the president's scripts that if he didn't answer it this way, there was something wrong with it. I think the first attempt by some persons to claim that the president had said that it was not feasible or that the need had not been established, it's falling flat. And now I notice a new attempt to say, but why didn't he answer it this way? He was not obliged to answer the question in anybody's
just for that, I got this transcribed for me because I wanted to be absolutely clear. Just read the rest of what you said.
Yeah.
The president continued. Because the journalist asked, go ahead, you don't see the need for an airport?
Good, and that was a very good question the journalist asked because, and if I just may explain, when the president made the initial analysis that this is an area that is close to Takoradi, which has an airport, close to Accra that had an airport, anybody who was listening, and I don't begrudge the questioner, was beginning to form the impression that the president was suggesting that
it wasn't going to happen.
So it was very good that the journalists asked
Then the president clarified. The president said the response of the government should not just be people said we need an airport.
No, hold on. I think that your transcript leaves out the first part of the president's answer, because I've transcribed it as well.
No, the first part is what I read.
No. After the journalist says, are you saying there's no need? The president answers by saying that, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, and then he moves on to this.
Okay, I mean,
that part is critical. Because it cures a supposition.
Okay, but let me read. The response of the government should be the matter has been thoroughly examined,
yes,
and the needs being established,
yes,
and that is a process that the Ministry of Aviation is going through.
Absolutely,
it is doing the same with Koforidua, the region from which I come, which is also another region location which is very near Accra.
Yes,
another an hour and a half. To be able to decide for ourselves whether, in fact, the need for an airport can be justified.
Yes.
When you have Accra, you have Kumasi,
yes,
you have Tamale,
yes,
you have Takoradi.
Yes.
Whether on the coast with Accra's presence, there is a need for an additional airport. My fundamental question to you on the back of this: if the report exists, what does the report say justifies the placement of the airport?
That is what we've put here in our manifesto, and not just that, added Harbour to it as well. We are clear in our mind that it is feasible, it is important, it will help improve economic activity.
For transparency,
let me just give you
experts have said it's not.
These days
so what does the feasibility study say?
These days you can have all sorts of experts. Let me give you some numbers that we have been working with. For example, on an annual basis, about 310,000 people go into the central regional area for tourism only. Discount all other economic activity. Then you take the Cape Coast University, tens of thousands of students, and then you have faculty who are doing their regular travels in and out. Then you take secondary or senior high school education. You have scores of schools in the Cape Coast area, tens of thousands of students, parents who are going in and out, visiting their wards, as well as faculty. The kind of traffic flow that goes into and out of the central regional area is pretty well established. Number two, the conversation was about an airport in the central region on the outskirts of Cape Coast that offers you a bridge between the central region and the western region. Indeed, today I've heard the aviation minister speaking on another radio station now go further into that detail that yes, that is where we are eyeing to put it, in the central region, just on the outskirts of Cape Coast, between the central region and the western region, so that it can be a good midpoint that serves the two places. So we are clear in our mind why and what we intend to do. Now, if there are those who say that once the president didn't say it at the interview, then it means, if I've heard some say, it was smuggled in. I've heard some say it was smuggled in at the last minute. I can assure you that
it's in the written hard copy.
This piece of work was done months and months and months way ahead of Saturday. It was not smuggled in. It was not an afterthought. It is something we are quite clear will add to the economic growth and expansion of the central region. And hopefully when we have a second term,
the whole airport was built and has struggled to find flights.
Yes.
Question is commercial viability. Are the airlines interested in flying to Cape Coast?
Yes, they are. In fact,
they've told you this. It's in the...
I know what conversations have taken place. In fact, even the funding and construction of the airport, there are private entities that are interested because of the traffic projections.
To fund the construction.
Yes.
How much is it going to cost us?
Well, I'm not going to throw out those numbers here.
Because you don't know?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and throw out... I am not under any obligation to throw out some numbers here.
No, but this is transparency.
Don't worry, we will give...
People must gauge. I'm sure you've heard the view from Central Region. People doubt that this will happen.
Don't worry.
So they'll need to know how much will it cost. Has government thought about that?
We will give the specific sector persons the opportunity to outline some of these details. I'm telling you the numbers that have gone into determining the feasibility, the kind of traffic flow in there. I'm telling you that there are even conversations with private entities that are interested in front-loading some of the...
But to my question...
If I may land with my answer.
No problem.
If I may. Some of the private entities that are even interested in front-loading the financing because of the feasibilities associated with it. My point in conclusion is this. Let nobody be under any illusion that the fact that the president didn't announce it at his interview means that the numbers don't add up.
Back to the question. How much is it going to cost us?
Well, I'm not going to be putting out those numbers here now. We're going to leave the sectors responsible for some of these things to outline the details. You are the information minister, Mr. But it doesn't mean I'm supposed to be sitting here putting out all of the numbers.
No, but these are numbers. You say that private sector is willing to put in, government is going to put in money. You must know
So at the time we mentioned free senior high school, you would recall
that was a big conversation that we had about cost.
It was. But you will recall that when you're doing manifestos, when you are doing what in America they will call platforms, you are not necessarily putting definite numbers on everything.
But this is why this is different. You've told us tonight that we've done feasibility study. Feasibility study will tell you commercial viability, will tell you cost, because you have to net it off against, I'm going to pump in this, I'm not going to get the returns.
And I'm saying to you,
so it cannot have a feasibility study without knowing the cost of the airport.
I'm not going to sit here and throw out numbers. I've explained to you what the big vision, what the big agenda of the new patriotic party in this second term, God willing, in the central region will be. And I've also told you that if you look at our history and if you look at even global best practices, it is not the practice that for every single promise that you make, you put a figure to it ab initio.
But this one is different.
It's not
because
different.
of your admission there is a feasibility study.
It is one of the policy commitments we are making
but
to various
comes with a feasibility study.
Country. For example,
was completed by your words long before Saturday.
For example, there are major infrastructure projects that we have talked about in this country that at the time of envisioning it, we have not necessarily put a hardcore figure to it publicly.
Yeah, but this you may have. I'm just drawing attention to.
Don't worry about it.
Your own admission that this is different.
It is no different.
Those ones you admitted. Well, you're now going to do the work.
It is no different.
This one, the work has already been done.
I don't want to split hairs about it. I am saying that there are several infrastructure projects in this country. When, for example, we spoke about the Burkina Accra Central Spine Rail Network, we explained a big vision. We told you the broad-based feasibilities that have taken place. We didn't start off by putting figures out there because in this public discourse, here's what happens. If today you put out a number that says 21 million, okay, and tomorrow by the time they finish, because of topography, extra work, etc., it's 26 million. You now have a second conversation about potential inflations, etc. So what I'm saying to you is that this is the broad promise we have made. It is backed by a clear understanding of the fact that it is feasible, and we'll leave the ministries and the persons responsible for many of these sectors to flesh out the details as we go.
Have you seen the feasibility study yourself?
No, I haven't cited the entire document.
But you know it exists.
Listen, I work with briefs. I, as information minister, I work with briefs. Okay. The brief I have is that there's a clear feasibility that gives us an understanding that this is a necessity for this area. It has market potential. There are interests, even from private sector, that may be willing to front load the financing for it, and we are able to make a commitment to it that we will deliver to it.
The new harbour that the Vice President promised, what sort of harbour is this? This is a Tema harbour replica?
My understanding of all the conversations that have gone into it is that it's an ultra-modern, large-scale fishing harbour. That's my understanding of all of the conversations that have gone into it. The reason being, Cape Coast, as I'm sure you are aware, the Central Regional Capital has a very, very, very significant fishing pool in there that could do with significant investment of this nature. It will go a long way to ensure that in terms of the kind of business that comes into these ports, storage, transportation, haulage, those who are doing ancillary services there, it adds a lot to their economic activity. So that's my understanding of what goes into that one.
Let's talk about the rent initiative that was announced. You're going to give loans to poor folks like myself, poor journalists like myself, so we could rent. But the clarity that many people were asking in the back of the promise was you're giving them the loan to pay the landlord rent advance. But there is a law that says you cannot pay rent advance beyond 6 months, correct?
Yes.
I mean, I'm wondering, is it only loan to pay 6 months?
No, if you look at the housing component of our manifesto, we break it into about 3 parts. First, there is the rent part of it, which says that, listen, there are a lot of young people, and if you do the sit down with young Ghanaians, if you do the focus group discussion with them, there are various layers of challenges. Those who can get access to education, those who get access but cannot afford it, those who are looking for jobs, and those who, once they get a job, have challenges with rental, etc. Now, in dealing with that specific challenge, the policy proposition, which we have now committed to, is to put the rent assistance scheme together. What it does is that if you have gainful employment and you have regular income, be it in the formal or the informal sector, and this regular income is demonstrable, the rent assistance scheme, having registered landlords, available supply of properties and those who are also in search of those properties will be in a position to front load the rent advance for you. And then because your regular income is also insured, there's an insurance component to it, as your income flows in, you settle those obligations to the scheme. This comes after we have done two things to the rent environment. One, you know there's a new Rent Control Act, which we have sent to Parliament, which seeks to deal with the realities of 6 months, etc. And two, a digitization of the space to make it easier to match demand and supply for housing units. That is on one spectrum, which is the rental side. Then you have another spectrum that deals with low-income housing. That for low-income housing, one of the things we need to do is to reduce the cost of producing these housing units in terms of the inputs, in terms of unencumbered land at low prices. That makes it easier, therefore, for those in the construction space to really put out affordable housing. You recall, we've had several challenges in this country, from STX to wherever, about affordable housing that is not really affordable, from the Kufuor days till now. The learning is that if we are able to ensure that the cost of materials, the cost of land are all reduced, you have a higher chance of getting affordable housing at really affordable rates. You have another level which has got to do with what we call the middle income housing. And the middle income housing, we are looking to solve it in two ways. There's a mortgage side of it, so that if indeed there's middle income housing, people can pre-finance it and pay over a period. So you have the mortgage scheme, which we have outlined in the manifesto and how it works. And then you have the supply side, which seeks to make land banks available, again, affordable technology, not necessarily the one in the low-income area. But if you go to Singapore and other places, as the studies have been done, they have high-quality, affordable technology for building, which delivers building in a shorter period of time with quality materials that don't necessarily cost as much as this our cement and concrete that we are doing. So a mixture of these would ensure that you have middle-income housing with a mortgage scheme attached for people in the working class who need a mortgage to purchase a house and pay with their incomes over a period. You have the low-income housing where we support to ensure that the housing is made available at real affordable rates. And then for those who are just interested in renting, you also have a space where we can front load this advance for you, and then your regular income comes into play. But all
for how many months?
All of this,
for the front loading.
All of this is now supposed to be dealt with under the new Rent Control Act, which is now before Parliament, and then the digitized
so just for clarity,
regime.
The loans, for how many months of rent advance would that cover?
Those fine details have to be worked out. But my expectation is that it will be in consonance with whatever final output the law becomes.
But the current law still limits...
It's 6 months.
So 6 months, yes.
We have a new bill that is before Parliament. The idea is to get that bill enacted, and in consonance with this 6 months, then ensure that this your 6-month rent is paid for you, and then you can service it over a period.
They also in the manifesto that I saw, I mean, one of the key things that has also come up, I'm sure you followed the conversation. This is about something that I didn't see. I mean, there's a lot. That's something I didn't see.
Okay.
The manifesto is also about a lot that is. We've talked a lot about what is in there, but what about stuff that is all in there? One obvious. I don't know whether it's on a mission, but it's too glaring. It's ECG concession. It also is a big deal when you come into power. In fact, if you look at the 2016 manifesto, you made a commitment to improve that.
Yes.
It's completely missing in the 2020 manifesto. Yes. I wonder, have we completely abandoned the concession arrangement?
As we speak now, you know that from 2016, we raised challenges with how that concession arrangement was being operated. When we came to power, we amended the structure of the concession agreement. When we launched into it, I think it was on this very show that
when the news broke that you had,
that we had challenges and therefore had to pull back. As things unfold currently, though we keep on the horizon the potential to improve the ECG turnaround program and continue to examine the various options for it, the status quo is pretty fine and functioning.
As in ECG managing everything?
It's pretty fine and functioning now. Your lights are on, the billing is on, the servicing and ancillary services are on.
But the losses are still there.
Well, not as much as it used to be, which therefore generated this whole need for the concession agreement. So as I said, now we are not making a commitment that we are going to, in the next 4 years, God willing, if we have a second term, put ECG on a private sector participation program. We have not said that. We have not committed to that. The current model as is functioning appears fine for us, and we have not therefore committed that we'll put ECG on the private sector participation.
So the clarity then, it was left out because you are happy with ECG taking full control.
We have not had reason to make that a priority in the next 4 years.
Okay. So ECG can rest assured that
we have not, you know, you like to reframe my answers.
No, I'm just for clarity.
No, and I'm repeating my answers. We have not had reason to make that a commitment for the next 4 years.
But fraud was committed on us in the PDS. Why haven't we seen any prosecution?
Well, so you are making a categorical statement that fraud was committed.
It is words that were used by the government side that went to investigate the matter.
Mr. John Peter Amewu, Energy Minister, when he spoke. And remember, we said that...
But the team that traveled came back and made an established fact that that's what they found.
No, they didn't say that they had found fraud. Relax. What we said was that we were terminating or were discontinuing because a condition precedent had not been fulfilled.
Yeah, that's the statement that came before. I'm talking about the result of the team's work. I have a copy of that report here.
I also have a copy. I'm coming to that. Let's flow from the beginning. And then Mr. John Peter Amewu mentioned that it was because the guarantee that was procured was not proper. And there is the belief that it was fraudulently procured. That was the first time that the expression fraud or fraudulently was mentioned in there. The government of Ghana then proceeded to investigate what had transpired. The company that was supposed to have issued that instrument then denied being the one that had issued it. The government of Ghana came back and said, well, to our American partners, we cannot continue with a transaction with a party who from the beginning issues a document which it then proceeds to disavow. Whether that document was issued as a result of fraud or negligence, or as the American investigation then sought to suggest, it was later issued and then somebody gave it to somebody on the second. Whatever the underlying reasons were, we were not able to continue because that document, which was a condition precedent, at the time when it was issued, was not worth the paper on which it was signed. I know people have then proceeded to say that, okay, there was fraud. Find the people and put them before the courts.
Is that so? That's not government's view?
That is currently a matter of litigation.
Where?
In the courts here in Ghana. Between PDS and the government of Ghana.
PDS has sued government?
Yes. Here, in the courts here in Ghana.
And their claim is what? That we wrongfully terminated the contract?
Yes, wrongful termination is one of their claims. We contest that. We have grounds for contesting it. So those are the matters that are currently in court. We are pretty confident that our case before the courts will hold up at the end of the day. Okay, so and I won't proceed to make any.
I get it. So I get it. So as far as government is concerned, this fraud argument, it's not something that it's not a position of government.
We have said. Well, the minister mentioned that it was one of the suspected reasons.
But your investigator didn't find so.
That the document that was produced could have been procured out of fraud. We have insisted that whether it was fraud or it was negligence or the company was now revoking and retroceding, I think that was the expression that they used, or whatever technical name they chose to call it. It was not worth the paper on which it was written, and therefore we could not continue. Now that is a matter of litigation. And like I've said, I'm not going to go further into it. Let the courts decide.
Let's just some quick clarifications on a few issues, and then of course we can move on to the Japa matter. And these are a few things. If you really pay attention to the manifesto, one of the things that crossed my mind was you say that you're going to complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET and establish a National Skills Development Fund. The National Skills Development Fund already exists.
I'm not quite sure whether this is
2020.
2020. Please read that for me one more time.
You complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET and establish a National Skills Development Fund. But National Skills Development Fund already exists.
My understanding of it is that we intend to complete that full expression that you have read, not necessarily segregate one into two. So it is a continuation of that entire program from TVET to perhaps ramping up the fund.
You say you're going to establish. You say you're going to establish the National Skills Development Fund. The National Skills Development Fund already exists.
And I'm saying that my understanding of that is that it is a full throttle exercise that we intend to continue with.
Yeah,
and the operative word at the beginning is to continue.
Yeah, no, sorry, complete.
Yes.
And this is on, just for everyone, it's on page 155.
Yeah.
Complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET. That's one bit.
Yes.
And then it says, and establish a National Skills Development Fund.
What does the Skills Development Fund do? It goes to... It goes
the Skills Development Fund is set up under the TVET policy.
Yes.
It's a government policy.
Yes.
But it's being set up under, there's a separate entity
and I'm
under
saying
TVET.
to you that my understanding of that is that the SDF goes to fund activities under TVET. We have a 5-year program to move all that exists under TVET from where it is onto a broader horizon. My understanding of that expression...
But you cannot establish something that already exists.
Evans, you're picking on words.
No, it's important. No, it's not.
No, relax.
You cannot establish something
Can I
that...
answer your question?
It's pretty obvious on the face of it.
Well, if you have obvious answers, then I don't know why you're asking me.
No, I mean,
a question. Let me answer your question.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, we have a 5-year program to move TVET from where it is onto a broader horizon, to expand it, to make it more accessible, to provide more support for persons who are going through it in terms of machinery and things that they require for startup after the initial skill training. But it is, the two go together. Yeah. If you train people and you don't give them the kind of resources that they need and the kind of logistics that they move on to, you're going to have people who've been trained, who have graduated from these institutions, who don't have the capitalization.
Final question on this.
Can I finish with the answer?
Sure.
Okay, let me please, so that people who are at home can also pick up from it. My understanding of that is that this 5-year program is what we intend to complete. We haven't finished with it. And so the full throttle of activities that flow from it, including the funding, etc., is all part of what we intend to finish.
That's one. But the wording is clear. Establish a national skills development fund. My question to you is, how do you establish something that already has been established?
I answered you already by saying that my understanding of it is that the two go together. What we are talking about is to complete the full throttle activity.
So the skills development fund...
Which is to expand that entire sector from the TVET themselves and the funding that goes along.
You said you're going to continue. What you're going to continue is a 5-year strategic plan on TVET, but you're going to now establish something that completely exists already.
Pick on those words. It is the full throttle.
But you put it in the manifesto.
Evans,
I mean, it's not my word. It's put it in the manifesto.
Yes, I understand that, and I've explained to you like 5 times what my understanding of it. It is one of two things.
The drafters of the manifesto know that we have already a national skills development fund.
I cannot speak for the drafters. I'm telling you the policy intent of the administration.
Okay.
I've explained to you what our understanding of it is. You may not like it, you may disagree with it, but I've explained to you what our understanding of it is.
Final one, the manifesto also says, launch a road maintenance infrastructure program to employ youth. In 2011, the NDC had a youth in road maintenance module under the National Youth Employment Program. What's the difference? How different is that?
My understanding is to encourage, and if you look at the parts that deal with entrepreneurship, we talk about having a lot more young people set up businesses that will now have priority attention because it is made up of young people and because of the kind of incentives we are offering to young people. My understanding of this is to seed that space to businesses owned and run by young people. In terms of policy infrastructure, that is very different from having young people as working brigades being recruited to fill potholes, etc., which is what we spoke against as an avenue.
So, and yours, what would the youth you're employing for road maintenance do?
Well, the difference between this and ours is that we are talking about corporate entities owned, managed, led by young people that do this, as against a youth employment program that are responsible for being contracted to do road maintenance projects, as against having working brigades of young people just patching up, potholes.
Road maintenance involves patching up roads.
Well, then you would say that road construction involves young people by the roadside, but the two are different. The difference is that you have a mechanism where you can contract companies. They will use manual labor at some point, but you can contract companies and give them contracts to, with all the machinery and whatever they require, be responsible for maintaining roads. You can also have a different model where you say that we have a youth employment model where young people, essentially like they do by the roadside, go and patch up these elements with pickaxe and hose, etc. The two are conceptually different.
You want to stay with me because when I return from this break, I'm going to move into the Japa conversation, the Japa royalties conversation. A lot has been said about that. The minority has served notice. In fact, former President John Mahama has served notice. He will not respect that agreement if he wins in 2020. But why? Stay with me. And thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. We're going to go to Japan shortly, but Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, there's something quickly that a press conference that was done today by the NDC. I want to give an opportunity to further clarify on this projects that the NDC had clearly stated are ghost projects. It came up during the presentation with the issue with the Adenta, right? Yeah. They say they managed to pick up as many as 100, more than 100 projects. They just simply listed 26 of them, including the Adenta one. And so to say that it's isolated, it's putting it mildly not true.
No, I have said that what I've heard a concession to is the Adenta project that I've heard the MP concede should not have been included in the list. I've also seen this evening on social media videos by people from other parts of the country that claim that this list of 100, out of which I'm told they listed about 26 or so, does not add up. And that some of the roads that they say are not correct, you find that they are standing on one end of the road when construction has started at this end, filming one end and saying that, look at the road, nothing has been done. That is what I've seen on social media tonight. But I'm saying that if the NDC says that 100 is incorrect, that's what they are saying, correct?
And they have evidence, though. They showed evidence. There's a lot of them that were there to see it.
Don't worry. We're not even going to debate on that one. We have put out 17,334 infrastructure projects. We have put that out to make the point clearly that we have done infrastructure across the 260 districts of this country. And we have challenged them to produce their database of infrastructure in their first term across the country. I haven't heard that come
Green
forth.
Book is there.
No, please. How many projects are in the Green Book?
I haven't thoroughly reviewed.
But that's the point we are making. We have now gone to 17,334. So if they come back and their only response is that we found 100 projects that are not correct, I'm already saying that those 100 claims are being contested. But you grant them the 100, add another 100 to it, add a third 100, and add 34. So take out the 334. You still have 17,000 infrastructure projects we are talking about, which we say is evidence of the fact that, contrary to the claims that this administration has not done infrastructure, we have done infrastructure across the length and breadth of this country. I will hope that they will now also come forward as we compare records and say, this is our list of, is it 20,000 projects or 19,000 projects? And then we can have a conversation. But merely holding a press conference to say 100 of the projects are not correct, I don't think negates the argument we have made.
Let's go to the big controversy surrounding the Japan royalties. Why do we have a foreign company which will not pay taxes to this country managing mine and your mineral royalties?
So, Evans, let's go back to 2018. In 2018, we proposed an idea to the people of Ghana, proceeded to convert it into a bill, submitted it into Parliament, and had a full-blown debate to answer this question. The reason is simple. Ghana, over the decades, has not had a lot of self-resources to invest in what we call a participating interest in mineral resource companies. And so very often what we have relied on is what we call the royalties. So you have a company like Anglo Gold Ashanti or several other resource companies that come dig up our resources and then account to us that they dug up 2 million tons. The price is $1,000 per ton, and therefore the royalties due the Republic are X. A few things happen. Because we cannot on a regular basis predict the kind of output year to year, and even the price, what ends up happening is that the royalties component that feeds into our national budget keeps fluctuating. And Ghana is not the only country that has this challenge. If you go to some of the Scandinavian countries or places like Canada, the way they have gone around fixing this is that you set up what you call a mineral royalties company, which will now front load part of those receivables and stabilize the utilization of those expenses. So in 2008, we went to Parliament with a two-tier program. The first part was to create the Mineral Incomes Investment Fund, which will now become the entity responsible for policing all our royalties. And mind you, a lot of our royalties were not being policed. If you read, I think, Professor Akilakpa Soya and his review of the resource industry, a lot of our royalties were not being policed over the years. So this vehicle will first of all police it. Secondly, this vehicle, 100% owned by the government of Ghana, is a vehicle that will be responsible for receiving the 100%
royalties. For now, but foreigners will take...
No, the Mineral Income Investment Fund 100% from now till the future owned by the Republic of Ghana.
The Mineral Investment Fund, yes.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about the Ejapa royalties.
I'll come there. I'll talk about Ejapa and ARG. I'll come there. But in 2008, we went to Parliament to clearly put this thing on the table, that we are seeking to set up this MIIF to stabilize the receipt and the utilization and to assign our royalty receipt to this particular entity. Now, I want to read to you sections 2 and 3 of the Act. Section 2 of the Act says that the objects of the fund are to A, maximize the value of the income that is due the Republic from the mineral wealth of the country for the benefit of its citizens. B, monetize the minerals income, the income that will be coming, monetize it in a beneficial, responsible, transparent, accountable, and sustainable manner. And C, develop and implement measures to reduce the budgetary exposures of the Republic to the minerals income fluctuations, as I was talking about. Section 3 talks about the powers of the fund. 3A says that the fund can now create and hold equity interest in a special purpose vehicle in any jurisdiction in furtherance of its objects, and special purpose vehicle shall be free to operate as a regular commercial company. B, procure the listing of the special purpose vehicle on any reputable stock exchange that it considers appropriate. C, assign or transfer all or any of its rights so the fund can do that assignment to the special purpose vehicle in furtherance of the objectives of the fund, and goes on to list a few other items. Now, we had opportunity to debate this structure, drew the examples from Canada and all the other places where this was being done, and said, we intend to do this so that Ghana can set up Africa's first mineral royalties company under the Mineral Income Investment Fund. So now there's a fund that has been assigned the royalties that will accrue to the government of Ghana. And that fund has been given the power to monetize it and to stabilize the flows of those prospective royalties. This fund is now getting into the second level of things, where they are now setting up their SPV. The SPV is Ejapa Royalties Ghana Limited. This SPV is being set up and is being assigned the royalties, the prospective royalties from only 16 mines in this country. 16 mines in this country.
What is the value of that?
Well, we'll come to that because that becomes a third part of the conversation. 16 royalties have now been literally approved by Parliament and assigned to Ejapa. Now, what Ejapa is going to do is to do this assessment. First of all, you have to assign it to them. Then they'll do this assessment. Mine 1, useful life of the mine outstanding is 10 years. If you look at the gold that is still expected down there, maybe 1 billion over the next 10 years. Mine 2, 300 over the next 4. They'll do this whole assessment.
You don't know as of now?
Well, you do the assignment first, and then they'll be seized with the power to do it.
But the contract says 1 billion.
Coming. You do the assignment first, and then they'll be seized with it to do this assessment. When they do this assessment, they will then calculate what you call the net present value of all these prospective flows. And then now proceed to say, okay, for example, if the future flows are worth about $10 billion over, let's say, 10 years, we want to float about 40% of this company. Now, this is the NPV of the future flows, 10 billion. We want to float about 40% of it.
Talking in hypothetical terms. Let's talk in real terms.
It is important.
Already written into
No, it is
contract.
important for people to understand these things before we throw the controversies in. Else nobody will understand it. So take 10 billion. You say you are floating 40% of it upfront. You will be left with another 60% outstanding. So when they do this validation and this assessment, and they come to the view that what they want to float is, let's say, 400 million or 500 million or 1 billion. What happens as a first step is that they take this share flotation value, because it is an asset that has been monetized. They take it upfront and make it available to the Mineral Incomes Investment Fund. Then you have a second tier of the 60% outstanding, which now, as the royalties flow, because remember it wasn't 100%, just about 40. As the royalties flow, this 60%, if the government of Ghana, like in this structure, controls the majority stake in this company, there's what you call a dividend policy. So now the royalties that are going to flow on an annual basis, okay, the government of Ghana still now has a majority share in that royalty flow. Those who have bought the 40% now get, give or take, about a 40% stake in the dividend that have been announced for that period. So you are getting about 3 benefits here. 1, you get upfront money, which is not a loan. Remember in 2016, the NDC mortgaged the flows from the road fund and took a loan, I think from UBA, at about 32% interest. And we spoke against the nature of that transaction. Here, we are not taking a loan,
but
we are selling.
That is not entirely accurate, though, Kojo, because what this is, and I want to go to the specifics now. What this is that we have the mineral royalties that are bankable and guaranteed between 3 to 5% that we get from the companies. What we're doing currently is that Ajapa Royalties will manage the fund on our behalf. We'll go to the market and we'll get an upfront of, as they, I've seen the contract specify, between 500 to 750 million, right, upfront from investors. We have to pay these investors with interest. We're going to pay these investors with interest from the royalties, mine and your royalties.
No, take your time and let me explain it.
You're saying that how are you going to pay back the investors?
Take your time. The investors are going to be paid from the dividend policy of the residual that is not floated. That's why it's important we all take our time and go to the structure. First of all, the upfront funds that is coming, and that's where I was when you came in. The upfront fund is not a debt. It is shares that are being sold on the stock market. You don't raise debt on the stock exchange. They are shares that are being floated in the offshore company, that is the ARG, okay, which is 100% owned by Ajapa. So the two are the same. It's the same entity, just that once you are incorporating one abroad, it will technically be a different legal entity, but it is the same. The 40% or whatever, whether it's 400 million or what they are assuming is somewhere between 500 and 750.
As in the amount that we are hoping to raise.
The shares that we're hoping to sell is about, let's say, between 750. By the time they finish with the final assessment of all the accruing royalties and its money value, that one, as I've said, comes to MIIF, and it is not a debt. It's very different from what we've done.
Let's not specify how much exactly are you?
Well,
how much shares?
They are going through the process.
So we don't know for now.
But the process they haven't is step by step. I mean, from the day one that they did the MIIF, they hadn't signed off on all.
But Parliament was still 500 to 750.
So what's the figure? It's a ballpark figure that gives you guidance that this particular thing we are doing. This is the guidance.
Okay. Well, what is the dividend policy?
Well, I'm coming to all of those. Yeah. So I'm saying, and we must recognize that the first thing that is happening is that we're not raising debt. I think it's something we need to get people to understand. That's one. Number two, because it is not debt, it doesn't come with interest expenses in our fiscal tables, which crowd out fiscal space.
Yeah, but you have to pay back dividends.
We will come to all of those.
We run out of time. So
let's make time for people to understand.
Yeah, but we'll run out of time in 3 minutes.
It is critical. Let's make time for people to understand it.
So let's utilize the 3 minutes.
First of all, if you are not interrupting me, I'll make the time. First of all, we're raising not a debt. We are selling shares. Yeah. We are not going to incur interest expenses on our fiscal tables. Number three, we are going to have a majority share in the residual royalties that come in. Remember, it wasn't 100% we sold. There's a 60% we didn't sell, assuming there's a structure. We are going to have a majority share in that one. Then the fourth very interesting benefit is that the government of Ghana now has, for the first time, a vehicle that has money that can invest in other mines and now take a participating interest in mines, not just in Ghana, but everywhere else around the world. So here's my point. This is something that was well explained in Parliament from the beginning. In 2008, when we were passing the law, they have now started the process of structuring a transaction. Nothing untoward has been occasioned with this transaction. We have to give them space for them to do this assessment, do this valuation, and come back and tell us that the pinpoint figure is X, and that these are the flows that come in. What we find unpatriotic as a majority, which we have called out, is that it is not right that when the government of Ghana is in the middle of transactions like this, you have senior politicians going out there and threatening investors. That if you participate in this, we will not honor it. This is why it is not patriotic. We think it is not responsible. We think that if you have challenges, you can raise those challenges, you can raise those questions, but do not threaten investors when the sovereign public is out there raising resources.
And it leads to my question. About the suspicion of politically exposed individuals, people aligned to your party, involved in the deal. If you look at the contract that was sent to Parliament that was approved, it says communicating in writing. If you want to communicate on this to, of course, if you look at in case of the fund, one of the names listed there is Kofi Oppong. Nkrumah, the senior minister, has two sons. One of them has the name Kofi Nkrumah. Is it the same Kofi Nkrumah?
Yes, this is Kofi Nkrumah, who is, over the years, been very experienced in mineral royalties transactions. Check his track record in the various countries that he's worked for. He currently works as SNIT, that's my understanding, and he's going to move in to
But that is a politically exposed person.
I don't get
That is a senior minister's son who's involved in this.
Therefore, Evans Mensah's son tomorrow is involved in a particular transaction that he's ultimately qualified for, and because he's Evans Mensah's son, he's barred from participating in it.
Yes, and so you see the reason why your opponents will say this is just part of a scheme by the NPP.
Show me the scheme. Because Safo Mafo's son, who over the years has been very experienced in mineral royalties, I'm coming. Who over
there's nobody else qualified, but independent and apolitical.
But why must he be bad because he's Safo Mafo's son?
Because there are many other qualified who are apolitical.
Including him. Yeah. Why? Because his father is a politician, something that he's qualified to do.
His father is a senior minister.
So
he's favored.
So no, please. Let's not do this to ourselves. Tomorrow your son, when he has an opportunity to do something, we'll say because his father is a known journalist in this country, he's disqualified. That's not the argument. Is there something untoward in this transaction? If there is, raise it. If there's nothing untoward, don't creep to this argument that because one of the persons involved in it is Osafo Mafo's son. I'm coming. That the mere fact that it is Osafo Mafo's son, regardless of his decades of experience in this industry, he should be barred from it.
Very finally, this vehicle, Ejapa, won't pay taxes to Ghana, but you're going to manage my royalty. How do you justify that to your people?
How does the government of Ghana pay taxes to itself?
I'm talking about Ejapa.
But Ejapa,
my question is direct.
Ejapa,
it's a foreign company.
No,
managing my royalties
is a Ghanaian company.
Ejapa is registered.
No, ARG is the foreign leg of haven. ARG is the foreign leg. Why? You want to attract investors to bring in their money to buy the 40%.
But they're managing my royalties.
They are going to bring in money.
And they're not paying
Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? Yeah. They are going to bring in monies to fund the 40% share flotation.
Yeah. Monies that they only get because of my royalties.
Answer your question.
Yes.
They are going to bring in money to fund the 40% share flotation. We are offering them a tax incentive for that money they are bringing in. Hold on. When the royalties accrue to the entity, Ejapa, the shareholders therein, including the government of Ghana, will not be paying taxes on the earnings therefrom. But if they proceed to invest that money in any other investable vehicle, they will be paying taxes on it in this country. We sit in parliament on a daily basis. Can I answer your question? We sit in parliament on a daily basis and give tax concessions to several entities that are going to invest money.
They are in a tax haven. That's different. What you're saying is different. I'm saying that they are in a tax haven.
What they are doing, it's not different. Take your time and understand
it's different. They are in a tax haven.
It's not.
They are not obliged to pay, and they won't pay taxes.
On what? It's not on everything. On the monies they are bringing in to fund this 40%, they are not going to pay taxes on it. On the revenues that will accrue to the royalty, first of all, royalty is tax. You know that?
Yes. I mean, but my
relax.
My question.
Where have you heard that we pay tax on tax?
Why?
I'm asking you a direct question. Where have you heard that we pay tax on tax?
I asked a question here, Mr. Oppong Nkrumah.
No, we're having a conversation.
No, it's a conversation. I know, but I'm saying.
We're having a conversation.
This is a government.
You are
government that is endorsing.
You are suggesting.
Tax haven companies managing my royalties on our behalf.
There's nothing wrong with it. You are suggesting that they should be paying tax on the tax.
Yeah.
Is that what you are suggesting?
My question. That's what my question is.
We don't pay tax on tax.
That's not my question. My question is about the tax haven.
Why are they not paying taxes?
This is the government that is endorsing
that they are bringing in.
And that's not my question.
If I can answer your question.
Because that's not my question.
That's the question you raised.
No.
Now, why are they not paying taxes on the money they are bringing in? My
question is why government is endorsing the establishment of a company that is going to manage my royalties in a tax haven.
They're not going to manage your royalties in a tax haven.
What are they doing? What is the Japa royalties doing?
Can I answer your question?
Finally, yes.
They are set up in Jersey as a tax haven to attract investors to front load this share flotation.
And they couldn't be established in Ghana?
Well, go onto the world market and find out where such companies are set up. First of all, they are being listed on the London Stock Exchange. Why are they not being listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange?
Yes,
they are being listed on the London Stock Exchange because when you study the history of mineral royalties companies and where mineral flotations take place, the London Stock Exchange is the most liquid market for it.
But yet in Parliament, you said that Ghanaians and foreigners can buy shares.
Of
you want
course,
Ghanaians to go on to the foreign exchange?
I'm surprised you don't know this. Ghanaians buy.
They do.
Ghanaians buy.
But you
Can
want
I
to put
answer
in
your question? Ghanaians buy shares on the London Stock Exchange on a daily basis. People have brokerage houses here in this country, fund managers here in this country who buy from where it is listed. I'm saying to you that you don't pay taxes on royalties. If anybody has a substantive thing against this transaction, let him raise it. But this cooked up story of an Isafo son and is this one's friend, I think it's becoming a beggared argument in this country. This is a fine transaction. Let us stop bastardizing transactions that mean well for the Republic. If there's something untoward here, somebody should raise it. But for all I know, and I'm sure your literature review will prove, you don't tax royalties. A royalty in its first place is more or less a tax. You don't pay a tax on a tax.
That is Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. I'm grateful.
Hey.